Hello everyone, I am architect Glyn George. I am currently working as an assistant professor with NITE School of Architecture, Planning and Design. I grew up in the Middle East and completed my BArch from NIT Trichy in 2014. And I'm here today to share my thoughts from my experience about going local, as an architect, and how we can actually understand the role of culture in our built environment and how that could be the ultimate step towards a sustainable built environment or design solution. So I'll just start with certain basic ideas and principles that has stuck by me from the beginning of my journey, even as a student. Following my interest in this aspect, I closely associated with Laurie Baker Center as a student. So there are a lot of inputs and takeaways that I carry till date in my professional life from there. So I'll just share my screen to give you an idea about the same. So the idea for vocal for local is more like a principle that must be a basis for us in all aspects of our life. So as an architect, this is definitely what I believe must define my work and everything I have done by far, and every person I have associated with in design. They were people who believed, in the same thing. So if as architects, we ensure to use local labor, local resources, and more importantly, local arts and crafts in the spaces we conceive, then we are doing our part to meet the goals of this particular vision. So when we land a project, if we carefully look around and observe, we'll know what we need to solve and how to solve it as well, because all the answers are right there. So most of the techniques are coming from experiences, from trials and examples, and they stood the test of time and will continue to do so when we apply it correctly in the right context. So that's basically the essence of what I am trying to explain or probably share with all of you in this session. So this kind of takes me back to a particular principle that has stuck by me, or an idea that I heard at the early years of my career. So from the time I was a student of architecture, I was always curious to understand the ethics and strategies of affordable construction. To me, it only felt extremely basic and necessary to be mindful of the materials and money that is used in a project. So this interest got me associated with Laurie Baker Center as a student, and I got a taste of how maximizing efficiency in design can be achieved locally within an affordable budget. So a learning that I strongly recollect from this phase is the 5 mile principle. So in the course of their conversation on housing for the poor, Gandhiji actually told Baker sir that the ideal house should be built with materials found within a 5 mile radius of the house. Now, this is something that stayed with Baker sir for the rest of his life. And I've read somewhere that he was initially skeptical about the whole idea, but later he wrote that, 40 years of building behind him, he was convinced that the idea that Gandhiji shared with him was true word to word. So basically, even when we look back at traditional architecture, it includes climate receptive and climate responsive designs with the use of local and sustainable materials, like water harvesting, natural cooling systems, sun orientation. All these are relevant even today. So modern architecture needs to respect and incorporate these learnings as a powerful tool in order to create a very meaningful and improved buildings of the future. So the reservoir of knowledge passed down through the generations can actually be a boon in energy conservation if implemented very diligently. Architectural elements like courtyards and clusters and towers, or roof terraces and jalis, these are among some of the examples that we can look at, for effective climate control in this part of the world. And they have actually become a very social and cultural element of our architecture. So the challenge is to reconcile these ancient methods with modern technological innovations. Now, we are also undergoing a very rampant change as technology has impacted several aspects of architecture and the wider field. So challenges are also arising due to extreme urbanization, reduced natural resources, and climate change. So with each project, the architect has to keep in mind these global challenges and carefully tread path of sustainability, alternative technologies, and eco-friendly solutions. Now, just to take a closer look at the role of culture in, built environment, culture is more or less the key element in the concept of sustainable development, or rather, it has to be, I would say, as it frames people's relationship and attitude towards a built environment as well as their natural setting. So, sustainable development is an integral part of the society and culture, affecting all aspects of operations in the built environment. So, the issue of the role of culture in sustainable built environment is becoming extremely more important due to the growing impact of the built environment in achieving society's sustainable development. So I sort of feel that these can be put down as three important virtues that today's architects must follow. So that would be reflection of the culture. Every built design, every building constructed needs to be a reflection of the culture of that particular area or the geographical context of that place, as well as the people living there. And secondly, sustainable design. So it has to be very, very mindful as far as the energy consumed is concerned, as far as the resources consumed are concerned, etc. And finally, but extremely important, is to make it cost effective. We chase a lot of strategies and technologies and methods of construction. But if we go back to vernacular styles and if we try and understand the fabric of where the project is conceived, then cost effectiveness is not something that you need to do specifically, but it just becomes a very organic part of the project. So, keeping all this in mind, I have taken a certain literature study in order to explain that just not usually when we talk about role of culture in built environment or when we explore examples about the same, we tend to look at buildings of residential scale or rather smaller scales to understand this concept. So here I've just taken a very relevant building that came up recently as a literature review in order to illustrate the infinite possibilities that can happen when you go local also. So this is actually a building which is of an institutional scale, like you can see here. So examples will always help us understand the possibilities and inspire us to think in certain directions. So here I'm taking a very, very recently completed building, which almost screams vocal for local, So it is placed in a context that we always consider very difficult to crack. And when I went through this project, what excited me the most was that an architect who belongs to a completely different context was able to come here and make design decisions that are completely inspired by the fabric of the site. So the example that I'm talking about is the Rajkumari Ratnavati Girls School, which is an architectural marvel that is designed by Diana Kellogg of the Diana Kellogg Architects. And this was commissioned by CITTA, which is a non-profit organization based in New York. And they kind of support development in some of the most economically challenged, geographically remote or marginalized communities in the world. So the contractor for this project was Mr. Karim Khan. It took almost 15 years from conceiving the project by or conceptualizing this idea by Michael Dwarb, who was the founder of CITTA. And he thought that placing this school in the Thar Desert was the right way to do it because of the literacy rates and also the level of education that girls receive in Rajasthan, and the numbers being extremely startling. So this was supposed to become, or this is supposed to become sort of like an arena or a platform which will be the face of women empowerment in the global front. Um, So here I am just sharing some of the images of this beautiful structure. This is a two-phase program, or a rather two-phase project. And currently it is the school that has been completed last year, and the admissions were supposed to begin in 2020, but due to the pandemic, they are looking forward to starting the sessions in July 2021. So there are 2 or 3 more complexes that will be coming along with the Rajkumari Ratnavati Girls School to complete the entire Gyan project as they have perceived it. So this is Diana Kellogg, and here the Gyan Center is basically to empower and educate women. So it is helping them establish economic independence for themselves, their families, and their communities. So since the Gyan Center is designed by a woman for women, so Diana was actually, being an architect from New York, but she was able to look at feminine symbols across the cultures. So that was a key thing that she looked at from the beginning of the design process, specifically symbols of strength, landing on a structure of 3 ovals in order to represent the power of femininity and infinity. So this is very well, replicates the plains of sand dunes in the region of Jaisalmer. So it's kind of causing this ripple in the desert, was what she described it as. So the Rajkumari Ratnavati Girls School is made entirely out of local hand-carved Jaisalmer sandstone by the local craftsmen. It was vital to Kellogg to include the community in a building that is made for the community. And that's exactly the essence that we are trying to look at, as architects, that we need to sort of embody in our designs. Using local material to create infrastructure helped reduce carbon emissions, and Kellogg chose to build a solar panel canopy on the roof as a cooling system where the temperatures, peak like really high. So both the canopy and the jalis, they keep the heat out, and the elliptical shape of the structure also helps to bring aspects of sustainability, creating a cooling panel of airflow. So here you can see how the classrooms are, designed as far as, in order to make sure that there is good ventilation, they made sure that the classrooms were big enough. They facilitated the air movement. And in the inner walls of the buildings, that's again plastered with lime, so that's already an insulation to the building. And even in the harsh climate, the children are able to move around in the courtyard, which is really massive. Magic with stones and the craftsmanship has been celebrated totally by the structure. And the schools will actually help to bring together the culture, growth opportunities for women and tourism, all of which is sort of actually giving meaning to the ripple effect in the desert that Diana Kellogg tried to sort of convey through her design concept. But she made sure that she understood the fabric of the place, used local materials, used local, human resources, and achieved something that fits right into the fabric of the desert or of our Thar. So to conclude here, I would like to take another example, the pole houses, as we all know, which is a traditional housing which we see around Gujarat or Ahmedabad, etc. So it's a housing cluster, of the traditional quarters, and it remains like a very classic model in passive cooling strategies. Now, the typology remains in use since for over 5 centuries. I mean, I have personally witnessed the microclimate impact these spaces have when I have visited Ahmedabad myself. So the typology remains in use since over 5 centuries and needs no air conditioner for environmental management even today. So I'd like to conclude with, leaving everyone with a question. Can we not learn the principles of these time-tested architecture and apply them in a contemporary way today? I'm sure each of us can. Thank you.